This is Learn from Others, where we interview a cross-section of successful individuals so you can learn from their experiences, achievements, and even their mistakes. We ask 4 questions that will educate and inspire. Greg Stanley will be your guide as we join our guest on a journey from adolescent daydreaming to success in today's world. Join us on this adventure as we learn from others together.
Welcome to Learn from Others. This is Greg Stanley, and I'm very excited to introduce our special guest, Heather Stengle. Heather, thank you for taking us on your career journey.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, before we find out what you're doing today, let's start at the very beginning. And can you tell us, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an accountant. I was good at math and thought that would be a good career path for me.
Wow. How did that manifest at a young age? Did you have a lemonade stand where you liked counting the pennies? Were you babysitting and you loved tallying up the money you made? I mean, how did that manifest itself when you were younger?
Yes, I did a lot of babysitting, and you're right, the paychecks and counting that up was very helpful.
Well, cool. What was your first actual job? It sounds like you did some babysitting. What was the first job that you got a paycheck?
Sure. So my dad worked for a newspaper in suburban Chicago, and he was a sports editor. And so my first job was actually working for my dad. I answered phones, and what happened was the high school coaches of various sports throughout the year would call in their scores of their schools, and then those scores would then be translated into like the big scoreboard page that's in the back of the sports section every day. So I was responsible for answering the phones and taking down that information.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. I never really thought about that. So they had to call in and say whatever.
Back in the day, because we didn't email anything.
Right, and you used a phone that was plugged into the wall.
Exactly.
Wow, okay, so your first job was taking those notes and putting in the paper appropriately?
Yes.
Okay. What was your favorite hobby or subject in school?
Well, it had to have been band and orchestra, probably tied. It's probably a tie for both of those subjects.
So if you were band and orchestra, I'm trying to guess, were you a string instrument player or a woodwind?
I was woodwind. I play flute.
Flute, okay. So you were in both band and orchestra. That's pretty cool. Growing up, you wanted to be an accountant, but it sounds like you had a little bit of music in your life. So what do you do today? And if you would, walk us through kind of your educational path and what jobs you took that take you to where you are today.
Sure. Well, while I thought I wanted to be an accountant, my senior year of high school, actually probably sophomore, junior year, my band director spoke to me and he said, you're not going to be happy unless you pursue something in music. And I said, well, but I really don't want to be in a practice room playing my instrument 24/7, trying to get one job of, the jobs are very limited in performance. And he said, you have some skills where you might consider pursuing maybe the behind-the-scenes part of music. And I had never even thought of that. But he kind of put that idea in my head in high school, and I have to give him credit for doing so. And I would say that the field of arts administration, music management, whatever you'd like to call it, was kind of just blossoming at that point. And so I started thinking, maybe I should pursue in college, I wanted to pursue music, and maybe I should be pursuing this avenue of music, which was like music business, arts administration type thing. So in terms of my education, getting to where I am now, I did an undergraduate bachelor's of music, and then I went on to graduate school, and my undergraduate was at Wheaton College in Illinois, and then my master's degrees were actually here at UC through CCM as well as the business school. And then as soon as I graduated with my master's degrees, I was actually hired. I was doing an internship with the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, and I was offered a full-time position with the orchestra. That was about 20 years ago, where I started off entry-level, working in the production department, taking care of the guest artists who would come into town every week, and then was promoted sort of within, and I'm where I've been now. I've been in my current position as Director of Operations since 2006. So it's been, 12 years.
Wow, that's really interesting because it sounds like that was fantastic advice that set you right on the direct path you needed to go. And it sounded like you hit all the right spots at the right time, unless I'm hearing you incorrectly there. I didn't hear a lot of, I changed majors, I moved here, I switched colleges, I started a job I didn't like. It sounded like you were a pretty straight shot.
Yeah, it's not many people are as fortunate or as blessed, I think, to have a situation like that. But the doors opened and things just progressed. And yeah, I'm very happy to be continuing to do what I do every day.
So what was one of the maybe challenges you had along that career path, or was there a challenge or obstacle you had to overcome to continue on? Because it sounded like you went from being an intern, which was a great way to meet the folks at the CSO, where they got to know you and they offered you a job. Was it pretty seamless, or did you find there was a couple obstacles in your way or, unforeseen challenges?
I think a lot of the unforeseen challenges are just in the day-to-day, week-to-week. You never know what kind of personalities you might encounter. You might encounter difficult projects. Like I can remember in 2008, the orchestra was invited, and the orchestra under the blanket of the Cincinnati Pops was invited to play in Beijing, China for the Olympics, and that very, very prestigious invitation. And what we learned, what was very challenging, was to take an orchestra of about 130 people overseas in a culture that is vastly different from ours, and how do we work and produce in that? And I think that there were a lot of challenges there culturally, not to mention the language barriers, but how they do business, how we do business, it's very different. And I think the wide variety of experiences that we participate in and that we face being an orchestra as like a cultural ambassador, I think that's one of the hardest things or one of the best things I've learned, or one of the hardest things I've learned.
Wow. Yeah. And could you walk us through a day in the life that you're dealing with? It sounds like you work with
Sure.
a lot of different folks in different, is it just the symphony orchestra? So you're bringing in the guest soloist, or walk us through all the different aspects of your job.
So as the director of operations, I'm pretty much overseeing the day-to-day operations of the orchestra. Well, what does that mean? That means their schedule, that means their rehearsals, performances, anything that happens on the stage, making sure that the working conditions for a musician are appropriate, that they're safe, that all they really have to do is worry about playing the music. We try to make sure that it's like home away from home, wherever we might be, so that all they have to do is look at the notes on the page and play a great concert. Something might come up where something's wrong with their dressing room, a snafu with the schedule. Sometimes, we had a situation once where there was a water main break and couldn't even get into the building. So then what do you do? Do you have to move a rehearsal? And also just basic stage operations, lights, sound, chairs, stands, making sure that everything is ready to go for them. And this could be here at Music Hall. This could be out in the community. This could also be on tour somewhere in the world. Asia, Europe could also be a recording that we're doing, because maybe we're going to be putting out a new album. And so it's a lot of the work is the same, but the conditions and the people and everything else change. So there's a lot of variety in what we do.
Right. And how often do they go on tour or do different locales?
So within a given season, we will play out in the community. We're going to be doing a concert coming up in November at the University of Kentucky. So we'll do some regional work. And then the big international tours, we actually did 2 last season, mostly because, number one, we had gotten some really nice invitations to go to some festivals, both in Asia and Europe, but also because we were renovating Music Hall and we actually had to be out of town while the hall was being worked on. So typically, I would say an international tour might be once every 3 to 4 years.
Okay, that's cool. Well, before we move on to our next question, let's take a moment to hear from our sponsors. Do you enjoy your job and find it fulfilling? Or do you spend more time wondering what if instead of what's next? If so, contact Career Spa. Career Spa has extensive programs and curriculum and understands the challenges faced by individuals in transition. They can teach these success practices to be mastered for an effective job search. Answer that what if question by contacting Career Spa and asking their experts, what's next? Contact Career Spa at careerspa.net. Talent acquisition is key to building a successful organization. Talent Connections is a professional services firm that specializes in recruiting, including executive search, contract recruiting, talent acquisition consulting, and recruitment process outsourcing. Whether you are an individual or a Fortune 100 company, Talent Connections can connect you with success. Contact them at talentconnections.net. Welcome back. We just learned what you wanted to be when you grew up, which was an accountant, and then we learned what you are doing today, which is Director of Operations for the Cincinnati Orchestra?
Yes.
Symphony Orchestra. Okay.
Yes, for the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, right, which that encompasses the CSO, it encompasses the Cincinnati Pops, and it also encompasses the May Festival, which is the official chorus of the orchestra.
This is a dumb question, but is that in May?
So it is in May. It goes back about 140 years to the great choral tradition that the city of Cincinnati has. But it is also a year-round chorus. They perform with the orchestra regularly. They have their own performance schedule, and then we, the orchestra, actually perform for them as the official orchestra in May. So we're partners throughout the year.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay. Well, looking back on your career, and every different job you've had, is there anything that you would do differently, or any different type of education or experience you wish you had that would have prepared you better for what you're doing today?
Honestly, the education that I was blessed with has served me very well. I'm very thankful for the opportunities that I've had. I was also at a young age, maybe high school, college, I was encouraged to do internships, and I think, and I tell people today, that's like the saving grace. Like you need to do those internships because you have to test it out, test the waters. Is this really what I want to do? And get some real life experience, because the education is wonderful, but it has to go hand in hand with the hands-on experience.
Yeah, and I hear that more and more. Internships and having a mentor, whether it's informal or official, working at a place you think you might want to have a career. Is this right for me? Is this something I'm interested in? Is this job what would fit my skills? So,
right, exactly.
Now, if someone would like to do what you're doing, what advice would you give them? Would it be your career path that you would recommend, or is there something different? What type of advice would you give them?
I think you can come at it from several avenues. I went the music school and then business school track. I certainly know others that did that. Some people go right to business school. You don't have to have a music degree. However, I think it's very helpful in speaking the language with the artists and the musicians that you deal with every day. I also think just work experience. I think you can learn the necessary skills, just in life, in terms of the education. But no, I think my path was good, and I know others, who have done similar paths and are doing very well.
That was great advice that you were given at a young age. I actually majored in music for my first year in college on a minor scholarship.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I did not have that direction or that support, and I did not want to be a full-time performer. I didn't think I had the skills to begin with, but I didn't get that, hey, here's another option kind of thing, so I ended up hopping around multiple majors, and it took me a while to figure it out, but that's where that sound advice at an early age is really beneficial. So that's great. So are there any projects you are working on that you would like to share?
Sure. Well, September is very busy for the orchestra. So this weekend, we are playing the live soundtrack to this first Star Wars movie. It's actually the fourth movie, but it's the one that I know as the first movie as a kid. And so the audiences will have an opportunity to watch the Star Wars movie on the big screen and then hear the entire soundtrack played live by the Cincinnati Pops. We're pretty excited about that, and concert's selling well, so we're excited to present that to our audience. Next week, the Pops is playing at Music Hall, and we have a wonderful guest artist. His name is Leslie Odom Jr., and those of you who might have seen Hamilton on Broadway or have heard of Hamilton, he was starring in that for quite a while. And so he'll be singing some songs from Hamilton, and then he'll be doing some Nat King Cole and just, some show tunes, so that'll be fun. And then at the end of the month, the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra takes the stage with our music director, Louis Langray. On September 22nd, we'll be playing some pieces by Debussy and Ravel, so it's like a French program. And then at the end of the month, we have the wonderful violinist Josh Bell playing with us, and he'll be playing Sibelius Concerto, and we'll finish that program with Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. So I think there's something for everybody, and if you're a student, there's some great student discounts. And if you're not a student, tickets are very affordable, and would love to see you down at Music Hall.
Speaking of Music Hall, we just talked about this before this call. There are tours available of Music Hall. Can you give us a little history on the actual building?
Sure. It is about 140 years old. It was built for the May Festival, which we talked about earlier, the chorus, and now it is the home to the orchestra, the chorus, the ballet, and the opera. And it started off, actually, its history is really incredible. It was like the convention center of its time. And, they did sporting events, they did political rallies, that sort of thing. And now it's primarily a music venue. However, you can still have your prom or your wedding or your graduation here, too.
Oh, that's really cool. And it's a gorgeous building. I've only seen it from the outside, but just from the outside, if you Google it, it is absolutely gorgeous. So I'd love to get down there and take a tour. Well, as with most journeys, success largely depends on reliable transportation. And since I'm a huge car enthusiast, could you tell us what was your first car?
So the first car I owned that was in my name, that wasn't my parents or anything, was an Acura Integra GSR.
Whoa, that's a great car.
I know. It was pretty fast. I had to watch it.
Now, did you pick that car out, or was that picked out for you?
I really liked the Integra, and I knew a car dealer at the time, and he gave me a really great deal, so I couldn't pass it up.
Wow. Those are actually going up in value now. They're becoming the new collectibles.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Well, what is your dream car, if you have one?
Well, my dream car is one that is paid off and affordable. I really don't have a specific car other than that.
Well, that's not bad. A paid-off car is a dream car. So, well, one perk to some companies is a company car. If I had all the money in the world, I'd like to buy you a cool company car. And based on I kind of struggled with this because I'm like, well, you're director of operations for an orchestra. I know you don't have anything to do with the opera, correct?
Well, we are the official orchestra for the opera, but in terms of like the management responsibilities, no, I do not.
Okay, well, I'm going to use that thin connection to make this justifiable, okay?
Okay.
I picked a 1938 Buick Series 80 Opera Brougham. So what is an opera car? It's basically, there's two different ones. This is kind of interesting. In the past, there would be cars where they would have seats that would fold up like an opera chair. That's where they were called opera cars.
Okay.
So you would have like two, the driver and the passenger. Then in the back seat, you could either put your luggage or you could put the seats down, the opera seats, and sit in. But this is actually even nicer. It's this huge car that typically is chauffeur driven. And the chauffeur in the front is exposed to the elements. Like they don't have a roof. It's a gorgeous, huge, swoopy car. And you would be in the back seat, covered up with the roof and everything. But it's a gorgeous car. It was actually a one of one. It was made for the 1938 Paris Auto Salon. So I'll send you some pictures and some links. It has a faux ivory steering wheel, and in the back seat they actually have a clock and a speedometer so you can see how fast the chauffeur is going, which is kind of funny.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
But it has dual side mounted spare wheels. But it's called an opera car because you would mainly go to the big events, such as an opera with your chauffeuring you there so you could walk out. So anyway, it's a little bit of a stretch, but it's a really cool car that I figured would be a great company car for you.
Terrific. Thank you.
And, if I have all the money in the world, it will be paid off as well. So that's good.
Well, that's the Dave Ramsey in me. I have to make sure it's paid off.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for taking us on your journey today. What's the best way for our listeners to learn more about you or the CSO?
So you can go to the orchestra's website at cincinnatysymphony.org.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Learn from Others, where we help others succeed by sharing success. Where will our next adventure take us? Subscribe to find out. If you know of someone who has a cool career story or occupation, contact Greg through Instagram at Greg Stanley LFO. That's GregStanley LFO. And we will see you soon as we learn from others together.